And we have a farewell to make here in just a few minutes. Then we will have public comments and commissioner response to the comments or comment of their own. And we reviewed the documents of the December minutes rather, and the police commission member recruitment will be the next item on our agenda. So we'll take a short break and be back with the chief's presentation, and then we will discuss uniform appearance policy and closing comments at the end. So moving on the agenda, let me, at this time, we've welcomed Terry, our new member, so let me have Jesse Lorkey step up. And Jesse has been a commissioner as long as I have. We came on about the same time. Yeah. And I've learned to enjoy his perspective on things and his advice and his unique way of handling issues that come before the committee here. He's been very helpful to all of us. And so on behalf of the commission, I'd like to thank you for your service and your time with us and present you with this plaque of appreciation from the department. All right.
Very nice.
You'd like to say anything?
And
Oh, and this,
yeah,
everybody sign this.
Yeah, any opportunity to talk for a second. It's been great. I think the commission has got a bunch of great people on it. I'm sure, Terry, you'll enjoy your time. I love the discussion around the table. It's become, over the just over 4 years that Bob and I have been on, I think it's gotten more and more civil, better discussions about the stuff that everybody's facing, and hopefully continues to go on that way. Take care.
thanks, Jesse.
It's been great.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is public comment, and at this time I'll turn the meeting over to our Vice Chair, Bill Whalen, to conduct that part of the meeting.
Thank you, Bob. If you'd like to speak tonight, I need you to fill out a blue form. I have one speaker so far, so if anybody else would like to speak, would you mind filling out a form and we'll get you on. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, at which time, with 20 seconds left, I will let you know there's 20 seconds left, and then the sign will come up at the end of your 3 minutes. So appreciate that you honored the 3 minutes you have. So our speaker tonight, Jim Patterson, would you like to step up to the end of the table or set up at the end of the table?
I'm Jim Patterson, and I just finished. I'll sit down. Thank you. I just ended 4 years on BPAC, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and I'm still acting for them at this meeting. One reason they sent me is because they meet exactly at this hour, and so it was good that I could come. And I'm really here just to mention Vision Zero, which apparently I'm told by another member that City Councilor Claire Surratt said traffic safety is one of the most common concerns in a recent Register Guard piece. And Vision Zero is a concept that's pretty idealistic. It was started, I think, in Sweden maybe 10 years ago, and the City of New York has adopted it. And the idea is to try to reduce traffic fatalities to zero in a community. And of course, that's, I just said idealistic, but it's a goal to work for. And that involves any number of changes in strategies, including infrastructure, different kinds of police enforcement, and so forth. And I'm here to tell you that BPAC will be approaching you to talk about ways of dealing with this and a plan to go forward to make this work. And the City Council has already approved this concept. And then the only other thing is I just was asked today to bring up to you the fact that BPAC also will be talking to somebody, I suppose your chair or someone, about the really epidemic of bicycle thefts in Eugene. It's been bad enough since we've lived here for 15 years. But I just saw online today that the 3 places where bike thefts are the most common in 2015 were South Eugene High School, where 34 were stolen, and the Eugene Public Library, where 24 were stolen, and the Capstone community, where 17 were stolen. So you will be approached soon, I think, by somebody from BPAC about how we can improve the situation. Any questions?
Seems very straightforward.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. Since I don't have any more speakers, I'll turn the meeting back over to you.
Thank you, Paul. And our next item on the agenda is commissioner responses and comments. Please feel free, we'll get Marshall and then Claire.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson, for your service on BPAC. I get a lot of credit for the work you did at 30th, the crosswalk at 30th University. It has made it a lot safer. I just happened to send some emails the right people read, but it was your work that laid the foundation for getting that done. Actually, I did notice, I hadn't noticed Capstone, but I did notice that South Eugene and the public library were high bike theft areas, not least because someone tried to steal my bike from the public library. So I did email Connie Bennett, is it? And she said that I think the new revenues might allow them to do some. I also emailed South Eugene and suggested at the very least, putting signs up to let people know that it's a high theft area. And then also to consider expanding the secure storage. In the library, they could just convert one of the parking spots to a bike parking, and then at least people who are using the library would have more secure storage. And then also consider cameras, quite visible cameras, to do it. The library, I understand, had some concerns about user privacy, to which my answer was, point it away from the entrance. We don't care who's going in the library. We care who's private. So hopefully we'll get something done on that, but we'd love to work with you to make it happen.
Thank you, Marshall. We have Claire, and then Steve, and then Bill, and then myself.
All right. Yes, so I'm the city councilor who brought forward the Vision Zero resolution to the city council, which was adopted, I believe, unanimously. Might have been one no vote, I can't remember, but with a strong majority. And it is aspirational to some extent, but you got to set a goal if you're going to work towards it. And so the goal is to work towards a transportation system that has zero fatalities for users in our city, and enforcement is an important piece of how you work towards that goal. So I really appreciate the members of BPAC and sending you down here with that message. It's a great thing to see other groups of stakeholders in the community step up to find a way to help us move forward on the vision, because it will take everyone's cooperation to do that. But I think it's a good goal, and it is true what I was quoted in the paper, that in terms of kind of a consistent theme of complaints or concerns about folks, not just in my ward, but around the city, that traffic concerns, and usually about specific intersections, but is a universally kind of held concern that people have that I think we can do better at. So I have always been aware that Eugene is a mecca for bike thieves, and it's been a chronic problem, but I'm look forward to other ideas about how we could tackle that as well.
All right, thank you. I have a number of comments arising out of the Civilian Review Board meeting on Tuesday, so bear with me here. So we reviewed a case wherein officers were muting bikes several times. And based on the context and the video and everything, it didn't really appear that it was necessary, meaning it didn't appear to be tactical or perhaps an officer disagreeing with the sergeant or something to that effect. And in fact, when the officer was transporting the person to the jail, muted the mic on the trip. And it seems like, I've reviewed cases in the past. There's one that stands out where an officer was clearly saying, I'm hot, should I mute, And, the ICV stuff is really a shield, and we've been able to use that to defend baseless accusations. And it's kind of concerning to me that they would create a situation where somebody might be critical. Well, what was said on the ride to the jail, or what was said, about this about the citizen. So I don't know. I just throw that out there. I've seen it, a fair number of times, and I get that we see the Civilian Review Board sees a small sampling too. So we want to keep that in perspective. But I think that if the officers are doing what they're supposed to do, they shouldn't really be concerned about muting their mic unless there are circumstances where I can see that happening, like tactical or perhaps a disagreement about handling something. So that was one thing. The other thing that came up in this particular case was it involved an ATL, and that's an attempt to locate. And it was a little concerning about this process in the following way. The officer, apparently, this is what we understood from the sergeants that were present, that the officer, they know that there's an ATL, but they don't usually know like what it's for. And so they have to call and find out what it's for. And here's where it kind of creates potentially some difficulty. So sometimes ATLs are issued for witnesses and not someone that's wanted. So say an officer has an ATL for a witness. An officer says to the witness, hey, I need you to sit tight for a minute while I figure out what this is. Is that person detained? And is there reasonable suspicion to detain that person? Is there a constitutional potential constitutional violation here, Fourth Amendment? I don't know. That's a little concerning to me that especially if it's in a situation where there's a witness and not knowing in advance of asking to stay. Because under the color of authority, if an officer tells you, I need you to sit tight, they're being detained. So I throw that out there. That's something that arose in that case and was a little concerning, so I thought I'd share it. And finally, I'm just a little curious. This is more me. It was discussed by multiple people, but we've seen a number of cases over the years where it feels like the interaction between an officer and a contacted party, sometimes that interaction is escalated based on the officer's approach to the situation, more of a command and control or compliance. And I was just curious, like a lot of those, it seems like we see interfering or resisting, like almost like that interaction escalates the situation, then leads to like interference with a police officer, and that happened in this particular case as well. And I was just curious, do we track any statistics where like for interference, do we have a number, or I want to say maybe even disproportional number of interference on the basis of contacts, and what can we do to maybe, rather than escalate to a command and control, don't question me, sometimes you can just answer the question, and sometimes maybe not. The situation might not allow for it, but if the approach is more, let's keep it calm and maybe de-escalate, we might be able to avoid many of these situations that get escalated and lead to, frankly, a poor outcome for the officer, for people who have to investigate, for the citizen. So I throw that out there. I think it'd be interesting to look into that a little bit more. And I think that's all I have. Thank you.
For the report, Steve. Bill?
I want to start out, I want to welcome Terry. It's great to have you. I look forward to your input and our discussions. And I'm sorry Jesse left. I wanted to thank Jesse for all his hard work. And Jesse always made me think of things in a lot of different ways. And I really appreciated him having him on this commission. Also want to thank Jim for coming and speaking. I always appreciate when the public comes and offers their suggestions and information. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. I have myself on here last, and I wanted to thank Jim too for, I still ride my bike, Jim, and so I'm aware of some of the situations we get into, and I want to thank you, and I'm also concerned about the theft of bikes, so perhaps that's something the administration can tell us more about, whether these bikes are locked or the locks are being defeated, or maybe, I don't know if we keep stats on that, but thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Thanks for listening.
Come back anytime.
Okay.
I also want to thank everybody for coming out tonight again, and appreciate the participation. We have great discussions here about the issues that come up, and I thank you again. Is there anybody else that wants to share? Jim?
Well, I want to welcome Terry to the group.
Thank you.
I think you'll have fun. And I was wondering if one of the reasons we have such a high rate of bicycle thefts is because we may have a larger proliferation of bicycles in town than most jurisdictions do, and we welcome and we do a lot of things to allow for a lot of bicycle traffic. So I'm wondering if that leads to part of the issue also. And it also makes it, not only is it that there's more bicycles, but it also means it's a lot easier to turn them around for cash, I would think, if there's a lot of people wanting them in town too. So, especially if you just lost your bicycle, you might. So, I don't know. Chief might know better than I would, but I would think we have a pretty high bicycle population.
I can respond to some of
I thought you were
what
gonna-
We can have a couple of experts show up for a meeting if you'd like to talk about bike theft in Eugene and the theories behind why it's as high as it is. I could offer my opinions, but they wouldn't be as well informed as somebody from our property crimes and crime prevention that could come in as well. And then the question of muting mics is always a concern. You know, officers should not be muting them except for very explicit reasons when that's permitted in policy. So every time we see that, we should be looking into it. So it's not the kind of, we don't get a trigger anywhere in the system when a mic is muted. It's only when for usually other reasons it comes to our attention, like an internal affairs complaint or a service complaint. So I'm glad you mentioned it, so I'll make a note of it so that we're watching for that kind of thing. And then ATLs, that's a really good question that you raise when somebody's in our custody, and the only reason for holding them is to find out why the detective wants to talk to them. So we'll, even if the police commission doesn't take that up, I'll take a look at it. Our whole system of ATLs it's used in this exact same way all across Oregon. I don't know how they do this in other states. So if it's a concern in Eugene, it would be a concern everywhere. So we can ask that technical legal question also. And then the question of I see a lot of videos that are generated out of citizen complaints, and it's pretty clear that in some cases the officer could have managed it differently and ended up in a bad place, and that we do sometimes escalate those things. We don't have a formalized de-escalation training program in our department, which has always been a disappointment to me. We should have one, and it's one of the things I'll be asking our new professional standards lieutenant to be working on in the next year or two. She has a lot on her plate. I have a lot of things I want her to get done.
Yeah.
That's one of them. But when things don't go well in an encounter and we think the officer played a role, then the sergeant, lieutenant, sometimes even the captain will sit down with the officer and talk about how the thing could have been handled better. So that does happen when we notice it, when it's brought to our attention. And then the question of interfering. Twice in the last year now, I've asked to have an audit done of our interfering arrests because it's concerning. It's the kind of charge that could be used in what's known as contempt of cop cases.
Right.
So I'm worried about the risk that it presents. And in most cases, and not just the simple majority of the cases, in most cases it's we try and stop somebody, a pedestrian, for a pedestrian violation, and they run, so we have to chase them and hold them before. So that would be an interfering charge. Same with bicycles. Or if someone is just simply making it nearly impossible for the officer to complete the job of arresting somebody or conducting an investigation. And in rare cases, it was used when it shouldn't have been, and we'll go back and we'll talk to officers when we see this. So it isn't, when the Department of Justice went into Ferguson after, in the year after that incident, one of the things they found was that there was an abuse of Missouri's version of interfering with a police officer, which is what alerted me and others to the concerns.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else, comments? Not, we'll go ahead and move into the next item on our agenda, approval of minutes, and everybody's had a chance to read them. They were in your packet. Any corrections?
I had one, just the spelling of my name on page 2.
Just a minor detail.
Oh, my gosh.
I wasn't here, Carter, so you're off the hook for that, except you typed my name in here anyway.
Raquel?
Sorry.
I have made the mistake of calling Raquel Rachel once.
Yeah, and you and many other people, so
But
it would be the first.
Okay, we'll fix that. Anybody else have any, Bill?
Under the working agreement section, Carter, it just says that Mr. Walker moved for approval, but there's no second.
There was not a second, as it turns out,
Yeah.
so I didn't record it. So if somebody now would like to Second that.
The retroactive second.
Okay. Thank you. We should probably take care of that before the minutes are, well, no, we should have the minutes first. So let's, any other corrections to the minutes? Okay. Now we will go ahead and take the motion to approve. I'll make the motion. Bill will second it. Thank you. And all those in favor of the working agreement signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay.
Yes, for
You got the
abstention.
code? You need hands or you?
No.
Okay. All right, so that motion's approved, so the minutes will be corrected
Did you abstain?
to show that the proper second was made. I apologize for that. Wasn't aware of it. We didn't.
Right.
Okay.
Maybe one of us mumbled it.
Right.
I might
It's
have.
entirely
I
possible
thought-
that I just
I thought I did.
I
Highly
didn't want to make
likely.
it up.
The mic was
Right.
muted.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
That's very funny.
Right, yeah, I made it a second. Okay. So now we have approved the minutes, so the next item is the police commission member recruitment. So we have people that will be rotating off of the commission. And it's been suggested before that, you know, we need to look at a cross-section of the community and trying to go out and be a little proactive in recruiting people. And I know that one of the things in our bylaws that is asked that we try to get input from a University of Oregon student. And we had one on here for a while, and she served as chair and did a very good job, very good person. And we'd sure like to have input as the university continues to grow. They become a large part of our city, and they should certainly be, even though they have their own police department, they should certainly be talking about issues that not all of them just stay on the campus. They do move around the city, believe it or not. So we should possibly try to do that. But I want to open the floor for discussion to see how the commissioners felt. What did you
The city's going to be doing a standard recruitment on the webpage and also encouraged any board and commission that wants to do additional outreach to think about it. And our bylaws are clear enough to specify who you're looking to hear from. So now is the time for you all to discuss if there are specific groups that you want to talk to, any kind of outreach to try to solicit applications for the police commission that might not come in with the general notice on the city's website. And we have 4 positions, 4 seats that are opening. And the people who are in their first term can reapply for a second term, and they need to reapply if they're interested, and then the mayor and the council will consider reappointment.
I'm going to ask a set of ignorance. Is anybody here in the mental health community? That'd be a good one, just because of the issues that have been coming up.
Be nice to have some diversity too, like perhaps there's some Hispanic outreach or something to that effect.
We did, but he left.
Does anybody, Carter's reminded me, we could talk about all the possibilities, but we should probably have a structured way of exactly what we are going to do and what someone might suggest that we do, practically speaking, to go do it and for recruitment.
Well, I intend to address that issue by sending out to all of my networks that are in the Latino and other diverse communities.
Okay.
That will, and so if I can get an email, and I have a few hundred people on just my email, it's kind of clear them. And also to try to recruit heavily in the Latino community to get somebody. I'm perfectly happy to have them take my place on this board if I can find somebody who would be a good candidate for that position.
Okay. Anybody else have any suggestions as to how we might do this?
mentioned this earlier to a couple of people, but I have social media pages here in Eugene that can reach tens of thousands of people in a week. And once we have a PSA from the city, that's where I'll be pushing it. And those PSAs can be directed to particular demographics. So depending upon whoever is going to make the decision about where we need to go heaviest with that advertising, I can do that.
Nice.
Okay, so we've got a couple ideas. One was Raquel has a list that she can distribute. Also, Edward has a list that he can send to. And I've heard diversity and representation from ethnic groups other than our own, maybe. So, is there anything else that somebody can think of as procedure? Claire?
So I don't know how many people this would reach, but if we're interested in folks who work within the mental health field or her clients, we might reach out to Lane County Human Services Commission, which works with the social service providers, and they could forward an announcement out to a very large list of social service providers. And we might do the same thing with Lane County Behavioral Health Department as a specific targeted outreach. And with an email that says we're interested in trying to recruit folks who work in this field or serve this population.
Anybody else? We've got students. I mentioned that at the beginning. I'm sorry. We'll put that in there in the mix too. Recruitment at U of O for students that might be interested in joining us. We can do that through U of O, maybe through the public safety department or through PIO at the U of O. Yeah, or the U of O. Claire?
The U of O student that you mentioned, was she recruited partly through, I know the 3 p.m. program encourages students to get involved with nonprofits and public engagement process. Did she come through that?
If she did, I don't remember ever mentioning
So the
it.
3 p.m. Department,
3 p.m.?
yeah, it's the public policy management and planning.
Planning and management.
Thank you.
Policy
I always forget what it stands
But
for.
everybody else is probably
Yeah, so, it's a way that students can work towards their degree by engaging in community process like this.
Okay. Edward?
I'm just thinking, one of the bullet points here in this memorandum talks about community groups and neighborhood groups, and it strikes me you might want to reach out to the Office of Human Rights and Neighborhood Involvement, get that into their newsletter, and out to the neighborhood association boards through that.
Okay, well, I think we've covered a lot of territory there. That's good fodder for us to work with, and we'll try to do that coming up. So, right now, I guess the next thing we can do is take a short break, and we'll take about 10 minutes.
That's how you know you're good. I was starving.
You're doing good.
It's a little tough biking when it's.
I know, that's right. Improved. Oh, yeah, I didn't know about tough my
I calculated.
And then I was there all the time.
Years ago.
Because I was hunkered down the whole first semester. After we
Seminar
took our final exam, we were over there.
Wanted to
I don't know.
continue. Do I really want to do this? 12 weeks worth of trips up and forth.
Whatever. Were you in the
After I could have done that calculation.
I was like the last year in the old one.
Oh, you were?
Everybody's like, yeah, that's a beautiful law school. I'm
was
like,
it
well, I
our
didn't actually go to
Saturday
the beautiful one.
me too.
I went to the dump.
Like the bus, that was it.
So I graduated December
Don't have a
27th.
car.
Oh, yeah?
Don't want a car. Happy without it. Just shop.
I was in Maine.
Just have a panniers on the
Yeah.
back. Of the occasionally.
No, I was a transfer from Madison from
the time that, you know, if there's something big, I've got have friends with it. So it just got to the point where it's 3 p.m. I was like, why am I doing this?
That's in the Bermuda Triangle, or Bermuda. It's in the Bermuda.
Yeah, exactly.
Does anybody do that?
Ask one of these people who's got an internet connection. I don't know the answer to that, but
Just wondered if there was like a low jack or like.
of course the problem is Eugene doesn't have a low jack system.
I'm on my wireless plan. I don't know if
In
there's...
fact, San Francisco, where we were talked into buying a low jack for
Your
our
wireless plan or something?
has, I think,
Selco's wireless.
7
Let's be clear about
control
that.
cards with low jack detector. You need 3
Right.
to triangulate.
What was I telling you?
So
Now, you were
the low
talking
jack signal goes off somewhere in a city that's gotten close to 1 million people in it. What is the likelihood of those cars being
It was good at the time.
Yeah, it was.
So then it was down to like 1.
It wasn't about math.
Well, he's around in this neighborhood
No, it was
somewhere.
not. We were off of
Well, I
that.
use the term loosely in
Yes.
that I'm
Is there
surprised
something?
with this amount of technology.
Yeah,
Yeah, you wake up in the middle of the night, oh, no.
yeah.
You know, I saw
I don't think it was about the
walking around
case.
Lincoln today.
Did you ever talk to the company?
My granddaughter. He's walking around
Today was meant to
and
read.
it has no seat.
It's kind of interesting. I mean, I deal with I'm responsible for the inspections for all the
I'm about to apply to CRB. This is my last term.
Why
I'm
you're
on
walking by.
rotates on.
How long have you been on here?
6 years I did.
Wow. I can't believe 6 years.
Yeah, I came in the middle of a term.
What am I thinking? I'm not-
Maybe there
I'm
may
not gonna
be.
be-
I really enjoy that work, actually. This case last night was, or Tuesday, rather. You know, by all accounts, it was
Some kind of audible alarm.
not like a material community kind of case or anything, but it was one,
We have
one of the most lively ones that we've had in a long time. And we actually
cruising
well,
still
a majority of us, it was split.
and we'll see him travel the
Majority of
same
us
street, loop back, and so on. Some
Findings
days he's on a bike, and some days he's on foot, which tells me that he's selling those bikes.
Found it in the same policy. I forget who at first, I said, no, I agree.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, Eugene being on the I-5 corridor, he gets people traveling between Vancouver and San Diego,
And we're supposed to
who are traveling in a U-Haul van or something. They've got, in some instances, a bunch of teenage kids that they will drop off in the city and have them go door to door selling scam magazine subscriptions. And then pick them up at the end of the day, give us some McDonald's, have them bunk down in the van, walk the next day to the same thing, and when things start to get a little hot, they just kind of come back really quick. We've seen that actually come cycling through some every year for some
when I was young, I loved it.
by yourself, you don't know.
That's got a very
Unless, not a crime.
pagan-esque.
Unless they're investigating certain
I have my bike is like
And they kind of were, I think, or just
looks like a little old lady's.
Well, in this case,
They have a cheap bike and an expensive one.
Yes, exactly.
I think, I was,
Don't wash it too much.
I was emailing Josh Scove about it. Because I know he's a big bike guy. Shane McRose, I guess, is the. So he emailed me and he said,
so they
at least for the kids at South Cable Lock. You can tell them a million times, don't buy the cable lock, buy the new lock. But
wasn't one.
They'll buy the P1 and then
Several months later, they discovered a similar statute, Oregon State statute.
I was shown years ago how to open most units, most steering wheels.
wow.
Yes. And so they said, hey, well, I mean,
That's not encouraging at all. It's what you pay for. It's what you pay for. Steve has 30 months where you need to know. It's complexity of steering wheels. So
kind of backed into it. So I just made a mistake in my report.
steals you so.
Everybody was going down the path where, you know,
A lot of bike thieves are not running around with hacksaw, bolt cutters, or working with
That friend of mine posted a picture from behind of a guy was walking on campus with a backpack with bolt cutters sticking out. It's like, I was like,
Subtle.
dude, talk about probable cause walking down the street. I mean, I'm sure he has a perfectly good reason for carrying bolt cutters around campus.
same kid. I'm like, there's no way. Oh, I'm telling you. So that's what I was like when I was so the picture was going down like again. And then Marines, so on. So you kind of said, I said, no. Sweet fucking all people who could.
Right.
3 others said, one.
Yeah,
No, I'm in it.
at a guarantee. We're getting out one workforce. We're leader than everybody else.
He's actually one of the
Majority of it said no.
Twice as many cars locked in. And I used to joke about it. You know, there's a checkbook, go, and the officer car all the time. And, you know, we got a guy here
When I was in the military,
on an organized crime ring.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, he never passed a check.
And it hurt words every time.
But he sold drugs. So he was drugs too. He's one of the
Nettle and 70s.
They brought him check. They took on $10 check. And then you have other ones.
within with great consideration. You know,
And so he was like on all these minor properties.
because he kind of was, his excuse was the sergeant basically was
That's the other
correct.
side. Is this one side is revenge. The other side is
It was very troubling.
The archetype. Yes.
Well, I wanted to say all that here.
Boyd Grafmeyer.
sometimes it's trading for
He thought he was Bill Gates.
When you don't,
On the other hand, had to work for him with the
somebody had just
I won an argument with him.
where's it over there?
And it never worked.
It gets reported back to the chief and command I mean, I was or Lieutenant Mason was there. So, they'll probably revisit that, but I don't know if it's all,
If anything will
it's
change.
already been adjudicated, so nothing will change. If anything changes, it'll be the approach going forward or like a discussion about it, like, yeah. I actually think command staff didn't like the result either, but based on the memo from the district attorney's office, which is troubling in itself.
So yeah, you
Carved on whatever part of your bike and they'll give you a call,
Don't tell me what
Then it makes like,
this is.
which I haven't done.
Get license plate for the bike.
Yeah.
so I used to be a state.
It was just, it smelled back there, there was so many.
This is what we did.
Had to go into
You say, when you bring your dog to the vet, there's a license that gets these. Well, no, I mean, that would be the way to do it.
Okay, everybody, we're back to the table. As pointed out, we're way ahead. We allowed a little too much time in planning for that part of the agenda, so we're way ahead of schedule, but, and that wouldn't matter. It's just that we had somebody planning to come later to talk to us about uniform appearance, but I think the chief is going to cover that for us. Also, Kyle, I want to recognize Kyle is here tonight. Kyle Williams, our new analyst person with the department. This is his first meeting. So we recognize you for it. And also Lieutenant Carolyn Mason is here with us tonight to help us out with any issues that might come up. So thank you both for coming in the evening like this. Thank you. So now we have the chief's report. So Chief, go ahead.
Well, you've all received the report in the packet, and I thought I'd share with you some things that I'm discussing in-service this month. I know I've told you that we're developing our strategic plan right now, the new strategic plan. We're starting this a year before the last one expires, and we're doing that for a few reasons. One reason is that post-Ferguson, there's been a lot of very good guidance that's come out about how to manage police departments well and how to better serve the community and how to have a healthy, well workforce. And so with all that guidance can inform the development we put into the strategic plan. Another reason is that the city is starting to gear up for the 2021 World Track and Field Championships. And in the year that that occurs, it's the largest athletic event on the planet. So this last year in Beijing, over the course of 9 days, there were 700,000 spectators. There was over 200 countries represented. There was over 1,000 athletes. And there were over 6 billion television viewers, 3,000 media outlets. And I think some of those were the same viewers turning their TVs on and off. 6 billion seems like a big number, but it is, a large part of the world will be watching this event and seeing Eugene, Oregon, and believing that that's the United States of America. So we want to represent our country and our community as well as we possibly can. So it creates an opportunity for us to spend 5 years getting ready for what will be a huge event for our community and for our state. And also, the purpose of the strategic plan will be to provide good guidance to our employees so that, in the moment-to-moment, second-to-second work that they do, they can have confidence in their decision-making and not be distracted by the worry of how I'm going to second-guess their decisions later. So that's the intent. That's what the intent of it all will be. And it's going to be simple. It has 3 values, 3 guiding principles, and we decided to limit it to 3 each because they know for some reason that I can only remember lists of 3, so I thought that'd be helpful. But the 3 values are courage, compassion, and integrity, and the 3 guiding principles are to keep Eugene safe, to build trust in our community, and to have an outstanding workforce. The 21st Century Policing Report, when you went through that, you'll probably remember that a lot of it had to do with the care and taking, the care and well-being of the police force and the smart things we can do to improve on that. And then by the middle of this month, every patrol officer who wants to carry a taser will have one available to them. We were able to purchase them this last year, and our defensive tactics team is going through training for all the officers who want them. So that's a good thing because they have enabled us to reduce the number of force incidents that we've had. And then we have decided to allow our officers to wear load-bearing vests. This is something I've been pretty reluctant to do for a couple of reasons. One, I think it detracts from the professional appearance of the uniform. And the other is a concern of the militaristic appearance of a load-bearing vest. The benefits of these, though, is that there's been a lot of new technology in this kind of outerwear in the last few years. A lot of departments are going to them. Not most departments, but many. And so they look a lot better. They have really clear police markings on them, more clear than our uniform presently has. And they take a lot of weight off the hips, so they're not only more comfortable, they're better for our officers' backs. One officer that's testing one now said that shortly after he got one, it's a nice, well-fitting vest. Has the ballistic vest is in a sleeve, front and back panels are in a sleeve in it. He says all his gear wasn't bouncing and falling off in a foot pursuit, and instead it all fit tightly to him, and he has all his equipment readily available. And he's a pretty fit guy, so it looks good on him. Of course, the uniform looks good on him, anything would. So all of my concerns have been addressed with this. I don't think it has a militaristic and we haven't, and I've talked with other chiefs that have gone to this, and they said they were worried about that too, and not one person in the community expressed any concern about that in their communities. That includes Portland, which has a political environment that's a little bit like ours, and expectations from their community that's like ours, I think. So that's happening. It's going to cost us a few bucks, but I think the long-term health benefits to our staff will probably more than pay for it. We have a draft policy for that. We have our defensive tactics instructors are testing it out. It's been tested at the range, the firearms range, so we know that it doesn't interfere with that operation of that. And when we've identified the funding for it, which I don't think will be a problem this fiscal year, then it'll take about 2 months to purchase and distribute them to those officers that want to wear them. So that's coming up. And then for some time now, our officers have asked to carry tourniquets, and our only reluctance with this is to make sure we have a good policy for it, a good training program, and refresher training, and a good way to wear them. So Lieutenant Doug Mozan has taken the lead on that. He's developed a draft policy that senior staff has approved. He's identified the funding for them. He's identified a product that we've ordered that will work well. Training will be in February, and then we'll have refresher training regularly, probably when we do CPR and first aid training. So that's coming up. And then you might remember that we've seen a high retention problem out at the 911 center. This is a real typical issue for all 911 center. It turns out our retention rate is higher. Our loss rate is higher than most 911 centers, a little higher than average. So a year ago, we partnered with EPEA, our police union, to select a contractor for this. This is the same consultant that we hired in 2006, which is good because they could see what we did and didn't accomplish in the last study. The last study, EPEA didn't have any involvement, and this time I wanted to make sure they were partners from the very beginning and help us hold ourselves accountable to getting the recommendations done. So there's more than a dozen recommendations that the consultants believe will help to improve the service and also our retention rates. The first step is to work on the strategic plan for rolling through the recommendations, and that's just getting started now. And then our hiring has been going very, very well. About a year ago, and you've heard from them here, we established a recruitment team. And with every passing month, they dial in a little bit more effect to their work. And we have a psychologist that reviews applicants for police officer and 911. And the 12 candidates that passed all commented on how informative our career night was for the 911 center, what the psychologist said she's never heard anybody comment on anything like that before. So the recruitment team has done a spectacular job of bringing in the right candidates, the right applicants for the job, and now we're able to overhire with this last group for the 911 center. So we actually have more employees in there than were authorized. I'm biting my nails a little bit. They promised that we'll get down to our authorized number here before too long. But we're in a place like we've never been before, so that's good. And then our police hiring has also been pretty effective. We had a career night last night, and we have more applicants at this point in the process than we normally do. We had 200 and some applicants by yesterday, so we're on track, they believe, to have more than 300 applicants this time around for this particular process, which is more than we've had for quite a number of years in any one process. So that's all the new news that you wouldn't have seen in my report that's in the packet.
Thank you for adding that in. Does anybody have any questions about any of the crime report, or any of the items in the packet? Okay, Marshall.
I guess we've talked about the bike thefts. There also noticed some commonalities on the residential burglaries, basically you're near Autzen Stadium and you live in a student apartment complex, the rates are a lot higher.
Right.
I mean, are we engaging them in prevention? There's the prevention side, are you locking your door and that sort of thing. And then there's recovery side, if there's a way of registering property, or at least certainly small pilferable.
Yes, our crime prevention unit is pretty effective. They're understaffed right now because we've used some staff there for the evidence control unit in order to get the inventory out there under control. But for an example, when the highest crime times a year that we have the greatest crime in West University neighborhood is during the spring break and winter break. So you give us 40 or 50 years and we'll identify these kinds of trends, And so our crime prevention unit spends a lot of time before those breaks in order to reduce that in West U and also in Kids Row and over there. And then before the football season, we do quite a bit of advertising to reduce car break-ins around the university, around Autzen, and where people park for LTD transports. And then for every burglary, a crime prevention specialist calls the victim days later to talk to them about prevention things, also to make sure that we got information, all the information that the officer might not have heard from the victim. Sometimes they notice things later. And then when we see a cluster, we go into the crime prevention team. Will go into the neighborhood. They'll diagnose what the common trends are, and they'll alert neighbors to what they could be doing. Every burglar has their own modus operandi, and if someone is in a neighborhood going into open garage doors, then the crime prevention unit will alert the neighborhood that that's how they're getting in, and those kinds of things.
Are they, because we're seeing certain addresses fairly common, are those the apartment complex managements generally cooperative with the
very. Yeah,
okay.
We work closely with them.
Well, nobody wants to be listed as the number one place for residential burglaries, but if they weren't, that would be one way of getting some leverage.
Yeah, I think students are probably less mindful, of protecting their stuff. And there's so many in this concentrated area. So there is a concentration of crime, but I think if we looked at it by population density, it wouldn't be as dramatic.
Oh, and just to comment on the tourniquets, in my 22 years in the military, I've seen the pendulum swing, because it used to always say, only as a last resort, and now, last time I deployed, it was any uncontrolled bleeding, you're not going to lose the limb, and you'll substantially increase the probability of them surviving to medical treatment. So I think it's well worth it. And, hey, if I can learn it, it can't be that complicated.
Yeah. I didn't mean to agree with you.
I did.
That's on the public record.
I didn't mean to sound like I was. But it's really, and that tourniquet thing is an example, and the load-bearing vest is an example of our officers having bright ideas. That didn't come from the senior staff team.
Thank you, Marshall. Jim, and then Becky.
I had a question on the load-bearing vests. It sounds like it's going to be optional whether they want to wear them or not.
Mm-hmm.
How does that, and look, I know we're going to go over it in a little while, but I know there was, with the uniform policies that we looked at from the different jurisdictions, it looks like they were pretty common that they wanted everybody to pretty much look the same. So how different do the officers look when they're wearing these vests as opposed to wearing them inside instead of outside? I would assume
they look different.
I would assume they probably would.
I think Lieutenant Matt's wearing his.
He's what?
I think Lieutenant Matt is bringing his tonight.
Yeah, you'll
Okay,
see.
good.
But they both this uniform and with the vest, there's no question that it's a police officer's standard. So that's the most important thing.
It is, yeah. And then I had a question on your report. What is, there were two mentions, there was a lateral call taker and a lateral police officer. What does that mean?
Okay, so recruit officers take the most time and the most expense to hire and train in the field. If we can hire a certified lateral police officer, then it takes a lot less. We can have them
Okay,
working a
okay.
beat in a short amount of time.
Okay, now, okay. Now I
So our department hasn't done much of this, but our hiring team, which includes the recruitment folks, wanted to take this on as a way to get people on the field quickly. And so we're going to try and hire one a month, I think. Or they've got a goal that would help us get up to staff that way. And we have an incentive of $7,500 for someone who's hired, a lateral who's hired, and 40 hours, I think 40 hours of vacation, 40 hours of sick leave on the books on the day that they'd be hired. It may sound like a lot of money, but when you consider the time it would take to train somebody, it's a huge savings. It's a heck of a deal for us.
That makes sense. All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Edward?
Just regarding what Jim just said, I just happened to read an article this morning that talked about other departments that are recruiting, which costs money, backgrounding, takes time, costs money, hiring, training, and then watching the officers move to a better paying job within a year. This was an East Coast city, but this goes on all over the place. And in that particular city, the cost of training that officer to the point where they're now able to go get another job was costing that city about $13,000 per officer. So the lateral hire cuts sharply into that and gives you some money to play with for things like vacation time and a hiring bonus. But
Well,
it's a
not to
bonus.
mention the backfill overtime for vacant position.
About tasers, when I moved to Eugene about 6 years ago, there was a neighborhood leader I now know well who was leading the charge against tasers in Eugene and declared them to be deadly weapons and so on and so forth. And I just want to applaud the department for listening to that and getting tasers anyway. And I would point to San Francisco right now, where there was so much public outcry against tasers that they do not have them. And that gave officers poor choices, and that has blown up so badly that there are now mass demonstrations trying to get the police chief fired. The mayor's inaugural was severely disrupted, all because officers didn't have anything else to deal with a man with a knife except their guns. So thank you for making sure that we have another choice than that here.
I wish I could take credit for that.
Yeah, go ahead.
That one.
Smile and nod.
Well, that could change now that Chip Kelly is the coach for 49.
He'll bring tasers in.
So I had a question, and I was wondering about, when you were talking about lateral, is Eugene losing people to other departments like Portland or, I don't know, Bend or wherever after recruiting? Is that something that you're facing as well, the other side of that, is you train people, what everybody's talking about?
Yeah, let's see now. We 3 officers, I think in less than 5 years each, around 5 years, have left in the last couple of years. We have our regular retirements. We'll have 4 or 5 retirements this calendar year probably.
Yeah,
And we had those last year and the year before. So, I mean, we definitely hear more chatter about that, absolutely.
Does Eugene have a contract that the officers sign when they come on that requires them to stay at a certain length of time?
No.
Some departments that can issue, they would have to pay for their training if they left before
Yes.
the first 3 years.
Yeah, some Oregon departments do that, require that they reimburse for training.
Sure.
All right, well, it doesn't seem to be a problem, so thank you for letting us know. And I was wondering about the charts on the times for MBAs and, yeah, it seems like naturally a lot of these are occurring in the evening when people are getting off from work at 5 o'clock and heading home. And this must be helpful for staffing, but I wondered if there are the TEU or anybody else plans to work around that time to try to avoid some of this or to cite violators so that it does prevent the accident. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the idea. TEU developed a plan for January that they're rolling out now, or they have in play right now. their staffing is pretty low. They're down a couple of positions, so it's going to be hard for them to make a dent in the metrics, but they're working on it. They identified for January that from previous years that the highest accidents are in the evening at Beltline and Moon Road. So that's that, and I think 7th and Washington are the two areas where they're focusing most of their attention. So you can do us all a favor, never drive through those intersections until February, and then contributed to reducing crashes there.
We'll get the word out. Okay. Anybody else have to declare?
So yeah, just a few questions, Chief, on the updates you gave. So for those of you who don't know, when I was working for the ACLU of Oregon, my introduction to the Police Commission was coming to these meetings to advocate for very strict controls on the use of the tasers, which we consider a less than lethal weapon, not a non-lethal weapon. So I'm not asking for this commission to review the policy, but I would like to look at the policy, and I was wondering if Carter might be able to send me a copy. Yeah, because I haven't looked at it in a number of years. I'd like to just look through it again. And then I'm really pleased to hear that the union is going to be a part of the process to look at the issues in the 911 call center, and that there's a plan in place to really take those recommendations and figure out which ones are going to work to get implemented and how you're going to do that. So that's something that's, I know, been a big issue for the union, and they brought that to the city council at one point. So that's really good to hear. And then I was just curious, you mentioned the recruitment team. Is that an internal group of EPD officers?
Yeah. Sergeant Kyle Williams back here is the lead on that, right?
Yeah, I was tapped to take over that team earlier this week. So that's actually been about 90% of what I've done this week is just trying to get my feet wet and figuring out what's going on with that. And there's actually a lot of stuff happening right now. And so we have a very active group of officers who are very proactive and want to be involved in it, and a lot of stuff in the works right now.
Right.
So
That's
I'm
great.
hoping to have radio advertising rolling within a week and a half for this recruitment process to try to continue to keep the numbers coming up so we can get a big pool of applicants and get all these spots filled.
You're up on YouTube already, right?
What's that?
On YouTube already.
Yep, and we're pushing out snippet videos. We're calling them snippets. There's 3 of them that have been made so far, and they're just short, catchy, quick. They don't take a lot of time, and so it's easy for people to watch the whole thing and be drawn in. And we're pushing those out on the police department's Twitter and Facebook pages, linking them to YouTube and whatnot. So, very cool stuff happening.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Those are my questions.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions for the chief or Kim?
I didn't want to jump in front of anybody else that hasn't had a chance to. Okay. I noticed that in one of the articles that came out in Carter's emails to us, it seems like one of them said that one of the jurisdictions was requiring tasers of all their officers. Was that Ferguson, I believe, or but I can't remember which jurisdiction it was.
Chicago.
Oh, Chicago. Okay.
Chicago is
Yes.
them out to
That was in the
everybody
news.
after that shooting that happened.
And you're right. Maybe it wasn't in one of your articles. Maybe it was in the news that I saw. But I thought that was pretty interesting. And you're right. Now that you mentioned it was Chicago, yeah, because of all the shootings they've had, at least it gives them at least a less than normally lethal option. You know, I know we talked about that too. And when you don't have the taser in between, you kind of go from kind of the baton straight to a gun, and to me that's just too big of a jump to go. And I know that the lateral moves isn't just losing people laterally isn't just a police problem. I know we have it at work too. I think Steve probably does too. We have a lot of times you're training somebody and they can jump to another position somewhere else pretty quickly and move up pretty easily. Also, I had a chance to see the 3 short, 15-second recruitment videos, and it was good to see Dave Clark on there again. I had a ride along with him, which was pretty interesting. So it was good to see him on there. So
Yeah, that was I don't remember whose idea it was on the recruitment team, but Melinda McLaughlin and John Hankmeyer in the PIO office helped quite a bit with it.
Great, thanks.
Anything else? Move on along then. Thank you very much for that discussion. Thank you, Chief, for reminding me of another stuff. And we move on to the uniform and appearance policy. So, we have Lieutenant Matt here to help us through this policy and to help us talk about what we'd like to see. And also Kyle Williams, Sergeant Williams, would you come up also to the table? So Lieutenant Nat is wearing one of the load-bearing vests. So maybe you want to take a moment. We had a discussion about that earlier when you weren't here to explain how this works. And
sure, I'd be happy to. About 4 or 5 weeks ago, we had a series of doctor's notes come in to the police, the command staff, pertaining to back issues and load-bearing issues with it, as it pertains to what we carry around our waist and the impacts that was having on people. Chief and very quickly made the decision that the transition would be beneficial to the health and long-term health, particularly of our lower backs. And so we are in the beginning stages of figuring out what kind of load-bearing vest which model and how we're going to configure it. So we're kind of working through it right now. Right now, this is a point-blank Guardian version of the load-bearing vest. It contains the same ballistic plates that are on the inside of my shirt vest. It's just a different carrier. So when we get issued our ballistic plates that go inside this, we get an internal carrier and now an external carrier. What this does, and it's just fantastic. I'm missing one piece. I got one more piece to move up. It's taken, and I'm a little different than most because I'm going to keep my ammo here. I just prefer it from my history. But it takes all this weight, the handcuffs, the ammunition. People are going to be able to have the radio up if they want the radio up. I prefer mine on my belt. And it transfers it up more into the core and puts it on the shoulders instead of the hips. So we're balancing that weight out, and it's not stressing the back out. It's much easier to move. I can actually bend over this way now. If you try that with all the gear in the front, it's absolutely impossible, and you can't lift your leg up. There's lots. We can't get over fences. Lots of good ergonomic reasons to go to this. I can tell you I've been wearing it for about 2 weeks as a command officer, and most people don't even notice it. Cops notice it. I think you would probably notice it more because I put my taser up here, but if this was gone, the public, I've been going to places for 13 years in my uniform, seeing the same people at restaurants. Nobody really has batted an eye at it. It's got some added safety features, and this is first gen. We've gone back to the vendor and asked for some modifications. This is completely reflective. The police on the back is completely reflective. We've asked for the addition of police on the front in the same reflective material right here. We want people to know that we are the police. It adds safety for officers when they're out on traffic stops, which we currently don't have typically reflective material on. I've qualified with all my firearms with this on, and I actually shot better, except I didn't like where my ammo was. And that's going to be a choice. I mean, it's like with our belt. There are certain things, policy dictates that the taser has to be a cross draw. I mean, there are certain things that were dictated by policy. We still have to maintain 2 less lethal. All the same things apply. There'll be options on where officers carry it. Now, the policy and the regulations related to the vest are still, they're at ACDER. They're with the Assistant Chief right now for review. Currently, the basic outline is you can only have 4 pouches in a taser, because what we don't want people to do is to do that. And they will. I mean, it's just natural. Cops like their gadgets, and they'll put more gadgets on. We've asked the vendor to remove the mole off the back. We're not going to authorize anything on the back, so they're going to remove that. Most agents, I don't know why they don't know why they put it on, because there's not an agency in the state that I know that allows anything on the back of them. It's fantastic, because when I'm in my office, I can walk around headquarters, listen to the radio. I have my gun, my ammo, and my radio. and I can leave the rest of the stuff while I'm here in a secure facility on the floor in my office. It's that fast. This is one of the undershirts. This would be the long sleeve non-winter undershirt. So it completely looks like a uniform top from here out to the sleeves. I mean, you would never know the difference, but this is lovely here. This is very, very, very temperature positive. So it's a dry fit material, and it's even a lighter material on the summer sleeve, on the light summer sleeve. The winter shirt, which I wore the first, is much thicker. It's like a small coat. Same kind of deal though. It's a little thicker through the sleeves and shoulders, and then thinner underneath. The vest completely covers all the same exposed areas as it would on a regular police vest. It's a pretty heavy, durable nylon. When this comes to wrap around, it tucks into the little pocket there. It velcros up here, and it's a quick zip. So it's a pretty slick little system. There are some limitations that we found. The people who've been wearing them for we've had one person wearing them about 2 months now. He was the first to get it. They're coming out with Gen 2, and we're waiting for the vendor to get back from Vegas with a Gen 2 copy for us, because we don't want to buy any more of them until we can mitigate some of the issues that we found with them. Chief's hearing some of this for the first time because he hasn't been briefed on it yet. We just had this meeting this week, so everything's moving forward very positively. I've queried our sergeants out in the patrol sergeants. We're starting at the patrol level. It's a voluntary piece of equipment. You're not required to switch to it. And they're giving me the list from their patrol teams of people that are interested so that we can get the numbers in. And the cost offset, it's not as expensive as you might think. The cost offset in the shirts is pretty significant. So these are much cheaper than what we currently wear.
And where are they manufactured?
Point blank, I have no idea. There's a vest out there called the Oregon City vest, and it's named after Oregon City PD. Some of our officers, I think our canines, are wearing Oregon City right now. It's another variation. There are any number of
vendors.
Yeah. Point blank, about, I would say, half of our patrol staff has point blank ballistics in them, and the good thing about that is when I got my vest built, all I did was take my iPhone, I opened the ballistic plates, have a serial number on them on the inside, and I just opened my vest up, took a picture of the serial plate on it, and they built the vest based on the serial number because it's stored in their computer at the manufacturer.
Nice.
So they knew what the dimensions were already, so the logistics of it were pretty slick. For those officers that don't have point blank, there's a little bit more work that has to go into it as far as getting them fitted. That's kind of where we're at. It's pretty new, and we're chugging along.
Questions?
Comment.
Comments?
Where you're wearing your taser is going to save somebody's life. Who's seen the movie Fruitvale Station or knows the story behind that?
Yeah.
There's a grocery clerk in my neighborhood, Oscar Grant. I knew him. He was accidentally shot in the back by a subway cop in Oakland, California. The last thing that officer said to his comrades who were trying to get this man cuffed was, "Stand back, I'm going to tase him." The problem is he's wearing a pistol on one hip and a taser on the other, and he reached for the wrong side. And he thought he was going to tase that guy. So the fact that you got a taser not in a place where your muscle memory is going to reach for the wrong thing,
Right.
That makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
I think you're going to save people.
And that's dictated by our current taser policy.
Excellent.
It's cross draw. It's opposite. A lot of cops will do opposite draw. They'll draw with their weak hand. And we just finished taser. I just got certified in this yesterday, so I was reluctant for a while. And we're finishing getting those folks done. So they were interested to see how it worked with the vest too. So the DT's team was seeing how I was functioning during the class. So it was a good opportunity for them. I failed to mention firearms had an opportunity. Sergeant Schultz and his team, when we all went out to qualify, they were prepared to have some input, and we're going to have a joint meeting between them and DTs as it relates to how this impacts our DTs and our firearms.
DT stands for?
Defensive tactics. There are places people can now grab us. There is a grab rescue handle on the back that we can pull our people out. We can grab them here, we can use the rescue handle, so there's some added benefit to us too, but we've got to be conscientious of these grab points now. And this Velcro on here is very robust. Okay, that was quick.
So the part still about the uniform, and while we're doing that, if you have ideas or questions or comments about current uniform policy that you'd like to bring up, or I mean, we have the International Association of Chiefs of Police policy from St. Paul, I believe it was, that Carter provided us in our packet, and it talks about a lot of things, including body piercings, tattoos, and every other kind of appearance that you can probably think of. And I found it was very interesting reading it, and I kept looking for, difference in gender and what they required for that, and it was very thorough. So I imagine our policy is going to be just as thorough, I'm sure, by the time we get done with it. But we are hoping that we can hash some of that out. Now, if you have questions or comments. Marshall?
Comment on the placement of the gun and the taser. I think it's good, certainly, that we would place them in substantially different places. I understand that there's certainly a desire by officers to be able to respond with deadly force very quickly. However, a disproportionate number of the deadly force incidents that end up being, I'm not going to say wrong, but mistaken, occur when officers are making decisions too quickly. And so I hope we will give some thought to that by preferentially placing the gun on the shooting hip. Are we sending a message that this is what should be your default, what you should default to? So I don't have an answer to that. I mean, I know the standard is, the quick draw McGraw kind of thing, and, I have no idea what the statistics say about whether that's justified or not. However, a lot of the shooting that have made the news have been ones where the officer could not possibly, in the time available, have made an accurate assessment of what was going on. And in the end, they were justified because, frankly, a bad Supreme Court decision that says we won't consider the whole context, we'll only consider the facts of that moment. I don't want us to be a department that hides behind that decision. I want us to be a department that, whether it be with criminal liability or not, but says we really want to look at these incidents in a holistic way. Was what happened reasonable when you consider all the circumstances, not just in those microseconds before you shoot. So, yeah, I mean, uniform policy is pretty far down the road in that, but I think the placement does suggest something about our priorities, and it's something we should think about at least. The other thing is quite on the other side, which is, it's a great thing. Disability rates for public safety professionals are very high. Part of that's the nature of the work they do. Part of it is just things we do that are really preventable. Equipment that we've traditionally made them wear in certain ways that aren't healthy, and given our modern understanding of things, because of concerns about professionalism and that sort of thing. I think we should be. I think this is a good step. You can add too much to that, but at least you haven't yet.
We're limiting that. We're not going to.
I guess one last comment. I'd like to see us take some time. I am concerned that on the I'm looking at the chiefs of police thing about grooming standards and things like that. While we want to look professional, there is certainly a tendency to refer to our own ethnic group and upbringing, which I would say in this group is traditionally short-haired, shall we say, male. And so while we certainly want to have a professional look, I think we should be careful about the standards we promulgate and make sure that they actually have a legitimate rationale behind them. Not just, well, gee, it'd be nice if they looked like us, but rather one, okay, we really think this is necessary because of this, that, or the other thing. If it's going to be clean-shaven, is it because they need to wear a gas mask, for instance? If so, what are we going to do about African-American officers who get a condition called BFB that prevents them from shaving? I mean, that's honestly, cities have spent a lot of money litigating that issue when they could have just been smart about it to begin with. So I just, I'm glad we're thinking about it, but we should be careful about what we do and make sure it doesn't reflect our biases.
Thank you, Marshall. Lieutenant Nat has a presentation to make, I understand, so.
I just going to update you on, I also chair the uniform committee. I have not, as far as policy goes, I haven't pushed a lot on policy, and I know Sergeant Williams has a few that are in the queue for draft. I wasn't intimately involved in the tattoo policy. In fact, I believe when it came to vote at Patrol Command, I passed on it because for whatever reason, tattoo policy wasn't salient to me at the time. I mean, it just, I don't know. To me, it's maybe a big deal to some. I don't think we should have them on our face, but we got people with tattoos, and that's, you look at the football players, the kids in college, they all have tattoos. I mean, the culture has changed to that standard. My uncle would say my uncle is so biased towards tattoos, he would say their intelligence is all down 10 points or something. Not my view, but that's how his stance on it. So I haven't been involved in that. What I have been working on, and well, this is top shelf right now. This is my main focus, is at the chief's direction, is to roll this out both thoughtfully and rapidly to our troops, and fiscally responsible. So I'm trying to accomplish those three tasks right now. That's the main thing. What I have been working on, and I comb over our policies. I'm kind of a policy guy. Our uniform policy needs some work. What I've done is I've got and I don't even think the chief knows. I don't think anybody knows I've been working on this. I've got a 24-page draft of a uniform regulations for Eugene Police Department. And what it does is it talks about all those things that you're talking about outside of policy. This type of thing, there's so much minutia in here, what our badge looks like. So that when our quartermaster goes to order a sergeant's badge, she knows what the specs of a sergeant's badge is. It has to be silver here or gold here. It gets down into that kind of minutia. The distance between the name tag on a regular uniform and the ribbon bar. It prioritizes our ribbon bars. What order are they supposed to go in? What is the most important one to be closest to your heart? Very similar to what the military is. I've fixed so many officers that are doing, we had them stacking them we haven't had that kind of direction. So I'm trying to, it's a low frequency, you really need it when you want it type information. You don't need to really know it all the time. But when we go to a formal event or when we have a funeral, our cops really, and I remember this from Kilcullen, really wanted to know how to dress correctly. This will take care of that. Hasn't even crossed Chief's, it hasn't crossed anybody's desk. I've been banging away on it on my computer. It addresses piercings to a certain piercings, hairstyle, haircut, shaving, how you wear your mustache, how we wear our collar brass, our sergeants, the chief. What those are, I have, there's diagrams in here. It talks about alterations, how we all these little things that alterations to uniform, the designation of what the uniform is, who has the authority over the uniforms, formal dress, dress A, service uniforms. It even gets into undergarments, not that we supply undergarments, but we regulate what people wear, what colors. That's already in policy. It addresses that. It addresses socks. Socks are in policy. Headgear. It talks about the components of the dress hat, because a police officer's dress hat is completely different from the chief of police dress hat. So it tells us what those components are, so that when it helps the quartermaster too. She's not guessing at what we're supposed to be getting. So it serves two purposes. It really defines what our uniform is to a very specific degree, and it also tells us how to wear it correctly, particularly in the formal setting, because that's the low frequency. And I haven't even put this stuff in. This is a whole nother. Unit pins, personal decorations. It goes through all this. It shows the chief how to wear his stars correctly on whatever he has on, his collar, his coat. It's that kind of minutia. So this is what I've been spending my time as a lieutenant on, is trying to get the draft of this in some sort of order. It's an ominous task, because it keeps rolling, and you start looking at the uniform and you think you got to get every piece in. If you're going to do something like this, you got to get every piece in. My motivation for this is, and I've used this policy and I've used our personal appearance policy in conjunction with this. So I've drawn from policy into this, but I've also augmented it. And part of my goal is it's my belief that, and I know policy takes, and you all know more than I do, policy takes a very long time to get vetted. So what my goal is to see a uniform policy that's maybe 2 pages that refers to this document that's more alive and more nimble. Not that it doesn't need to be vetted, but it's alive and more nimble for the organization. And it allows us to, like this was a very fast, this allows us to quickly insert the things we need to insert into it. We send it out to our people. This is available electronically. They can access it from anywhere. Oh, I'm going to court tomorrow. I need to know what ribbons order I need. So they've got that. We provide that to them. We're giving them a training or a reference document to properly wear our police uniform. So that's kind of my ultimate goal with it. I hope. I mean, it's funny that I bring this up now because he doesn't even know about it.
We'll have to talk now.
Yeah, upstairs, Dan. But it's just, and if it's something that's not wanted by the organization, it's okay. I just haven't had a great deal of opportunity to talk to the assistant chief recently. We've been lots of transition. So as far as uniform goes, that's the big piece we're doing. And this is kind of the other major thing, and a lot of little decision-making stuff at Uniform Committee that's going on. And that's pretty much where we're at right now.
Okay, right now I have Steve, and then Bill, and now Clay.
All right, I'll start with last first. I appreciate the approach to the policy because it does allow for flexibility based on learnings. You can adjust, like the guidelines or the procedures, if you will, and
Right.
kind of have the guidance up top. So I think that's great. As I was reviewing these policies, I just saw they were wildly different. Some were really tight, and some were really loose. I appreciate your comment about the tattoos because, like them or not, I mean, they're kind of here, So
Right.
some of these are really restrictive. Can't have them, One that just kept I didn't really see it adequately addressed, and I just wondered, it could create, perhaps it could create an issue, and that's about maybe some religious considerations,
Right.
Sikhs or whatever. And I don't know if I didn't see that well addressed in any of these policies, but it's something that probably ought to have some consideration.
There's an SO in California. It could be LA County. It's had its iterations. It's gone around and around, and I know there's a sheriff's office in, I believe it's California, they have Sikh deputies, and they allow the headgear, the religious headgear. There's been we've had some civilian employees. We had a Muslim civilian employee in records, and she was allowed to wear her headgear in the records department. So I don't speak for the chief, and I don't speak for everybody else. I don't have a big hang up with if we get a Sikh officer wearing his headgear when he does his police work. I don't know what the problem would be. In my personal opinion. Now others may have other opinions about it, but I guess that's where I would land. It can be addressed, and it has been litigated. I know that because I've researched.
Well, at least
it.
one of these allowed for an out based on unique circumstances, which I like that too, by the way. I meant to say that as well.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And those would be things we would have to take into consideration.
Right.
I mean, this thing's an infant as far as detail and things like that go. So,
That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, you bet.
Bill, and then Clay.
To give you guys a little bit of history, some of the discussions that have gone on over the last 12 months about uniforms and why we brought this up is I think being more militaristic looking officers, and then the couple of incidences where SWAT officers were from a training and were dressed but didn't have clear markings.
Sure.
I must say I do like that vest for several reasons. One, it doesn't have a large military look to it, which I worried about when Chief was talking about it.
Right.
And then I love the marking across the back. I think that the more that people can see you from behind and know that you're a police officer, I think is really important when you do that. And so I think that's what part of this we're looking for in this policy is to set those sort of standards that when you're on duty or when you're at a training that you are identified you know, unless there's circumstances to where, you know, you're undercover or something like that where you can't be. But I think that's where we want to make sure that it really is clear that we do not, you know, at least I think that was the discussion, and my view is that we don't want to look like a military outfit. Our patrol officers. We want them to look like police officers out there and identified as that.
Well, I appreciate your comments, and I appreciate the support for the best. It's one of my worries, especially when I come to a body that's very attuned to what's going on in the organization and pay very close attention to what we're doing. So I appreciate the comments on the vest from everybody. It makes me feel good that our first cut is not over the top. I can address the concern you had with speaking to the militaristic look. I spoke with the SWAT commander before I came here in anticipation that I'd have to address that, and he wanted me to assure that the commission, and I know the chief probably already knows this, they're researching their transitions to alleviate that situation from occurring again. They've already gone away from the subdued patches and the subdued badges, and they're looking at transitioning their training uniform to something that's not so, I guess militaristic. It's digital cami or camo. They're looking at transitioning to something different that's definitely more identifiable. So it's being addressed at that level, and that's typically an individual team issue, and they're working on that. They're aware of the concern with that. So just wanted to pass that along at his behest.
Thank you.
Okay, Claire.
So I'm just going to ask the chair a question, and I know I missed a few meetings back, and so maybe this was decided to be brought up when I was missing, but I didn't understand the rationale for us reviewing the policy and having this conversation, so I just wanted to be reminded of...
This was in our work plan because it was brought up at our retreat.
Okay.
The issue of the... I think what brought it to our attention was the issue that they're talking about right here was citizen worry about seeing a person with a gun and calling it in, and nobody seemed to know he was a police officer. So.
Okay, so I did not recall that it was in the work plan, so
that's where we brought it
that's
up.
great.
So
I appreciate the comments from other commissioners about being thoughtful about how we apply standards and what standard we're working from. I worked for a number of years at Disneyland, which has very strict dress standards, and women were only allowed to wear pants if they also wore a blazer. And when I asked the justification for that, I was told because they wanted to reduce the curviness of our silhouette. So that was in the 90s. Hopefully they've moved beyond that now, but that's just kind of an example of, kind of inherent bias that can be present in how you think about dress codes. So, when I was glad when you clarified that the vest is voluntary, because I was thinking, well, some women officers might prefer to carry their load on their hips because of how we're physically constructed slightly differently in terms of where weight bearing might be more comfortable.
Right, and we've already had one woman we fitted, and we found some significant hurdles we needed to get over with that.
Yeah.
The second woman is she's been fitted. She's one of our DT instructors, a little different build. One of the considerations we find with some of our, and even some of our male officers that are very fit and have very small waists, is they can't carry all this gear on their, they don't have enough room on the belt. The belt's too small because they're not eating enough donuts.
All right, we don't want to hear about that.
They can't get all the gear. I mean, it's very difficult for them to, there's not enough space. Yeah.
No,
it's true for both men and women. So this does that. This does the balance of this. I took this off today when I was at work, and I just had and I was just a joy to be able to walk around and he's laughing because he knows what I'm saying. It was fantastic.
My belt is leather to leather.
Yeah, it's stacked
from the back of each side all the way around to the front, with very little space in between each item, and it's a lot of stuff that hangs off the front. And I certainly, at the end of a work week, my low back is aching and sore.
Yeah. So we're taking the considerations that are in this are drawn, and I don't know if this helps anybody or detracts, are drawn from the military. And if there's ever a melting pot in America, it's the military. Anybody who's a vet in this room knows that. I'm a veteran. It's the only place I've truly experienced the melting pot of America as being an active member of the military. And military considerations, yeah, some people say, oh, it was super conservative. Well, yeah, but they for history have been taking into consideration the African American, the Asian, everybody, the whole demographic of America. So what I've drawn into this is from the military originally. Whether that's the best option or not, I don't know. But they're, of all the entities that we can comparably draw from, they're going to be probably the best source of the most diverse, both male, female, all genders, the whole bit. They're the best place for us to draw from for that kind of standard. Whether that's the answer for us or not, I'm not going to say that, but that's where I'm starting. Yeah, they have a huge pool, and it's a very diverse pool. So to allay some of that concern, and that's the other place. The military, there was a Sikh major in the military that was wearing his headgear too. So the military has addressed that issue. I don't think I've seen it yet, but I'd have to research it some more. But it's another one where I think I've seen that addressed, that specific religion. So that's where I'm starting from, is the military, kind of the military look at it.
Well, and I appreciate the kind of nimble response from the chief to bring this on board, and just based on this preliminary conversation about reducing lower back fatigue, and I think it's going to probably reduce other injuries, and that's going to help with overtime, people filling those shifts of people who are off, and then obviously medical costs. So I think there's a lot of benefits that can be realized by just a smart move like that. And I also agree, I don't think it seems particularly militaristic. It really just kind of blends in with your uniform. It looks like you're protected, which makes me happy. And I do think the camo prints is a thing that evokes that military feeling from the community. And so it's black, right? It's not a dark blue.
It's a dark blue.
It's a dark blue, yeah, I was trying to figure that out. I think, to us, I think to many people that says police officer, that coloring. So, and then in terms of the accommodation, for religious garb or hairstyle or for medical issues, I really prefer that be as codified as possible and not dependent on the discretion of a manager to say, okay, we'll let you do that. I think the more uniform your uniform policy is, the more fair that it can be applied to everyone. So, thank you.
I had Marshall and then Jay.
I guess the question about our current way we set things up. I mean, we do policies here, we pass them. Do you do standing orders as the chief, or okay? So what we might be talking about is sort of a general, fairly short document as our uniform policies, setting forth the utility is the first priority, professional appearance is the second priority, ensuring that the chief has the ability to set standing orders, and then you might set the more comprehensive, here's how you do it, standing order. I mean,
Yeah, it would be something like that. We have policies that are built out, like Lieutenant Nat's talking about we have policies about communication, and then we also have a radio manual that goes into all those details, and the same with report writing and those kinds of things. So we could have an abbreviated uniform policy that could be described in greater detail.
I guess I think I just feel more comfortable. I don't want to be where I just want somebody to thought about it.
And I cover there's a general section that opens, and it kind of sets that tone. And I think that's what you're looking for, and that can easily be translated to the policy and out of this into that policy, and then they just cross-reference.
Good time, Jim.
Okay, thank you. See Jim?
Okay. I agree with your comments about kind of focusing, using the military as a base for that. How many years of experience do they have? And how many different types of uniforms they have probably gone through, all different iterations of it, and I'm sure they're probably still developing them to make them even better. So I think that's a great place to come from. And also I agree with what Claire said about trying to leave as little discretion to the command staff as to what can what can be worn, put as much detail there. I know that's something that we run across at work all the time. You leave it to the discretion, and here's, one supervisor allows this, another one doesn't, so then you have a clash. Hey, this guy does, but Steve probably runs to that too. Then there's a lot of different opinions on what's good and what's not good. So I think I would agree with that. Would probably be a good way to go. 24 pages may be a lot, but I think ours at work, we only have a few things, and it leaves a lot to the discretion of each manager, and I think it creates a lot of issues for different departments that look vastly different when we're trying to all be kind of professional, and sometimes it's hard to tell. But I think another good one to look at is if you have to ask whether you can wear something or not, it's probably something you shouldn't be wearing.
Right.
But that's kind of something that we kind of try to go by if we can. So those were my opinions. Thanks.
Thank you. So the only question I have is, are we going to see this at a future meeting for the commission to look at what's...
Well, that depends on if the chief wants me to keep working on it.
Okay.
If it's a direct, it's not, I haven't even gotten this to AC Dur yet. I've been being creative in my own little world in front of the computer working on this. It makes sense because of, I think what the chief said is we've got this policy, we've got a communications policy, but all the details about our radio procedures are held elsewhere. I just got tasked with a report writing manual too, which I didn't ask for, but I just inherited for some reason. So I'll have to be, that sounds like it's doing really well right now from what I've heard. I just haven't gotten my eyes on it yet. So we'll be doing the same thing there. To me, this falls right in place with that kind of approach to the minutia. And we can achieve the generality of it in conjunction with this group in policy, and then allow this to be a much more nimble document, like our radio and our report writing. As things change, we can be very quick and nimble with how we address it. So maybe it'll get adopted. I don't know. Maybe I'm wasting my time.
We do have a uniform policy now in the policy.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so it's a matter of any adjustments that are made to this will come before the commission so we can take a look at it.
Sure, and I don't know why this, if this continues to live, absolutely, if you want to read about it, more than welcome to read about mustache lengths and things like that, but it will all be here, and I couldn't imagine that you wouldn't be able to review it and see what exactly we're talking about in this document and what the nimble pieces of it are going to be. So it may get a little longer than 24 because none of this is in there yet, so. And it's not fully edited.
So this is not to put a fine point on it and make you have to work harder at getting it to us. When it's ready, we'd like to take a look at it. I think that's what I'm saying. So.
No matter how long.
Right. Whatever.
Or how long it takes.
So I think I mentioned earlier, and we're all aware that the issue that came out, that brought this out in the beginning anyway, was about the issue with the squad officer on the street. And then one of our commissioners happened to see one also on the side of the road going to lunch with his geek, just a weapon on and camos, and like, who's that guy?
Right.
So we were talking about that, and I think that was the major issue.
Right.
I don't think we need to get into an issue either. So thank you.
Right.
Can I just clarify a question? So what are we asking for? Because, we're not going to look at the detailed regulation one, are we? Are we going to look at one that's more of a... But we're going to ask them to write a regular policy, though? I thought they said like
likely to say,
I'll work in conjunction with Kyle. You'll get a draft policy.
Okay.
In conjunction with, if this is the direction we move. Again, this hasn't been vetted by my boss, which indirectly is Carl Durr, and then to the chief. So Carl and I haven't even, I think I mentioned it to him, but it's been in our minutes from our uniform committee meetings. So it's been published to the department. They know we're working on this document, but AC Durr and I have to have a serious discussion about this so it can be brought to senior staff and have them say, Nat, finish this up. This is the direction we want to go. So I want to make that clear. Again, the chief didn't know I was bringing this, but I thought it was important, and I'm not trying to throw him under the bus or I just think if we want to keep it in policy, I got a lot to give you for that. So I'm doing his work for him, kind of. So it's, I just see it as a void and something that I was working on as the chair. So we'll see where it goes.
Chief, can I ask you, I mean, what, do you want us to look at that detailed, how long a mustache can be and not be, or would you rather have us look more at just the larger policy, which we normally do, and just come up with something that kind of sets some basic standards, which then you could take those and make them more detailed without a document?
Yeah, the having your input on the policy is always good. So it's totally up to you. I'm interested. I'd be interested in hearing your reactions to the manual that Lieutenant Nat's developing, but your charges with policy.
So just to keep us on track, and this is where I want to make sure that, because Kyle is coming on board, may not be aware, our job is to, if we have a suggestion as to policy or how policy should change, is to make those recommendations to the chief and make our own findings of what we feel are important to the community after hearing from the community, if that's part of the process, and pass it on to the chief. So we have a separate kind of, you have your work to do within the department, and we have a separate mandate from the community to input those recommendations from the community that they find the TASER policy is a good example, and put that into the chief's domain. So that, just wanted to clarify that so that Kyle, who's new, understands that we are going to be looking at it from that perspective. Thank you. Doesn't have to be, you do what you got to do, in other words, and we'll do what we got. Okay, simple. And anybody else had comments of Claire?
Well, I just think what Bill might be worried that we're going to wordsmith the details.
It's been a long time.
And I think, Bob's right. We might wordsmith the policy, but it's not our business to wordsmith the procedural piece that you're working on. But it would be good, I think, to look at it just to have that context.
Perfect.
Thank you. I also think we could even come up, if we see something that's missing, I think it would be worthwhile to bring that back. You're right, focusing on the policies is what we should do. And I like that idea of having the short policy, but with the guidelines and the procedure, with the policy pointing toward the guidelines and procedure, so it's not a policy, the policy remains short, and that way it does allow for the nimbleness. It doesn't always have to go up the chain of command to approve a policy, whereas if it's just in a procedure, you can snap change it at a moment's notice very easily.
It would still be the chief's discretion, but it would be much more nimble.
Yeah.
It could be done with a phone call instead of 5 meetings.
Yeah, wouldn't have to go through all the vetting.
Kind of like this.
Policy,
it was a phone call and the chief said, kind of. And the chief said go. So it's very nimble. It makes it much more nimble.
Yeah.
Quicker to move along.
And I would love, once it's all done, I would, it might be long, but it'd be interesting. I think it would be an interesting read just to see. He's like,
the pressure's mounting.
We've learned that Jim's a pretty good proofreader, too.
I'm going to send it to my MFA English sister. She's an English teacher in Chicago, to have her vet it before you get it.
But I think you don't have to worry about getting in trouble with the chief either, because I think the commission is kind of in support of this. So if he gives you flack for it, let us know. And we'll
I wouldn't do it if I thought the chief wouldn't support it. I'm not going to do something that's not in his best interest. That's who I work for. So.
Thank you. So any other comments or questions? Okay, so thank you very much both for coming tonight.
Thank you.
And thank you for the positive comments on the vest. It will be very helpful, and our police officers are super, super excited to be offered this opportunity. They're very pleased. It's a big morale booster, so thank you. Well, we could be like Bobby's in Britain and be like big, low, yellow all the way, and with big blue police in the back.
Because it's easier for them, they can't carry guns.
We'll move into Commissioner closing comments now. So does anybody have anything they'd like to close with? Something that came up in the meeting, or something that you would like to, Edward, and then Claire.
yield the floor to you.
Thank you. Just circling back to some things that were mentioned earlier, I really appreciate the report about the CRB work and the cases that raise particular concerns. I also share concern about the use of the interference charge when there sometimes might not seem to be any other related criminal activity that might have led to that. And it seems to me that, the de-escalation training and usage could be very cost effective because when we spend high-paid time of police officers to book someone into jail who then is later released and never actually charged with anything, in my mind that's a waste of taxpayer dollars and the good work of our police officers. So I think there's another cost-benefit analysis that could be done around how officers are spending their time and why they end up in a situation taking someone to jail who then doesn't actually get charged with anything. Chief, you said you were going to review or take a look at that ATL process, which you said you thought was the same throughout Oregon. And I would ask that when you have some information about that, what you're ready to share with us, I think this group would really appreciate hearing some report back about what you've discovered and if other communities are grappling with this. It might not be something that happens very often, but it could be that you detain a particular person and they hire a really good attorney, and then we now are facing a lawsuit for unlawful detention. And that's not good for anybody. So, yep, that's it. Yeah, except the attorney.
All right, we had Edward and then...
Chief, I have a question about shields. As you know, the British police have gotten pretty expert at taking on everybody up to cutlass swingers using shields. And I just wonder, where do ours live? Are they in a trunk of a patrol car, or are they in a storage room someplace?
We got a sergeant back there. Ballistic shield.
Proud.
They reside, I believe, in our SWAT vehicles. I don't think our patrol sergeants have them available at a moment's notice.
Are you talking about ballistic shields or just like
Tactical shields.
Yeah, my understanding, I've never been trained and I've never seen them deployed here. What I understand from back in the more riotous days in Eugene is that we purchased a bunch of them. Chief may be able to speak more to that. And from what I understand operationally, they're very, very cumbersome to deal with because it takes hands. And we need our hands.
Yep.
And the value of them compared to, and this is my understanding from, we've asked the same question, is that logistically when you start thinking about the things we need to do in situations, they become an encumbrance.
The one place that I've seen them be useful is if you've got literally somebody swinging a machete on a sidewalk.
Right.
You can actually wall them in and push them up against the wall.
Right.
And
Then what do you do?
Well, you're better off than you were.
You don't have a hand. That's the problem. Is I see what you see, but then you don't have a hand.
Well, you got your right hand because you only need one hand to hold the shield.
Right.
So I'm just saying it's a better option than.
Right. That's just one of the limitations that I know.
But it is useless if they're sitting in a SWAT vehicle and not in a responding officer's truck.
Right.
So
Right.
just want to look at that as some other option besides tasering, so on and so forth. And then the other thing I just want to do is thank this commission for passing the guidelines that we repassed again tonight. And I know that the Human Rights Commission will actually be notified that this has been passed and this is based on their guidelines and framework on how people work together, and I think that they're going to be appreciative that this commission chose to draft that particular set of guidelines. I think it's a good example of commissions kind of helping each other out in that kind of infrastructure way. So thank you.
Thank you. I have Bill, myself, and now I have Steve.
Well, I just want to thank everybody for their input tonight. I want to thank the public for coming to our meeting. I appreciate you guys attending. And also want to point out in the chief's report, he talks about the police award ceremony on May 4th. And I've been to this the last 3 years. It was really a great event to learn about what the officers are doing out there and the extra way that they go, and sometimes putting their lives on the line. And it's a great event. So
Do
anybody
we
can make
receive
it.
information about that? So does that get sent out to us in terms of when and where?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Look for Carter to send that, and many other things. Okay, I was next, and then Steve. So, two things. One, on the agenda for today, you saw the calendar, the upcoming commission meetings, and maybe wondering, may we have a retreat scheduled? Well, we're on a biennial plan, why do we need a retreat? But I believe the commission voted to come back in midterm and decide how much of our work plan we had accomplished and what we needed to do, or to make revisions to the point which prioritizes certain matters that we brought up and so forth. So we intend to have that in place of the May meeting. Still a public meeting, but it will be at a site like we usually do in May. Okay, so questions about that. Second thing came up tonight that I wanted to speak to, and that was regarding the police use of deadly force. And with all the controversy lately, this is a subject that probably needs to be clarified a little bit. The police, I believe, are trained for the very tiny percentage of the population which is evil. 99% of the people the police deal with are law-abiding citizens, and just sometimes in bad circumstances. But unfortunately, as we've seen lately with the assassination of some police officers, how quickly a person can be shot. And we're not talking about taking 2 or 3 seconds to think about it. We're talking about less than 1 second. Tenths of a second is all it really takes for the determined gunman to shoot a police officer. And we saw this over and over. So a lot of times there really isn't, the only thing the police have to rely on is their training. And what I wanted to bring up was the training system they use here. I was fortunate enough to take part in that. A couple of our police commissioners also took part in it and were able to find certain situations where you really had to think, but you also had to act, or the consequences of not acting resulted in the death of someone else or yourself. So it would be a real eye-opener if any commissioner had the time to take one of these courses. It doesn't take long. It's a maybe 10, 15-minute session, and see some of these scenarios and judge for yourself. Judge for yourself. It's easy to look back afterwards and say, well, maybe they acted too quickly. But it's also good to be able to go home at night to your family. So that's just something I had to get off my chest. So thank you for indulging me. And I have Steve next on the agenda, and anybody else.
I just wanted to share that for the May retreat, I have a conflict. My employer has a planning session as well. We have May, and we have 2 of May and September. And Friday is our board meeting, and Saturday is our planning session. So unfortunately, I have to miss that.
Is there something we can look into there? Or do you think that's going to have to be there?
We can talk about it. Absolutely.
Okay. We'll look into that, Steve.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Just to piggyback on Steve, what was the date on that? May?
It's May 21st.
Okay, no, that's fine. I thought it was earlier in May, and I was going to say that I would actually prefer it to get maybe moved too, but.
Okay.
Just one more thing, so I can have the last word on the interfering deal. I don't want to leave anybody with the impression that our officers are out there working people up to the point where they're arrested for interfering. We had an incident last summer that made me wonder about how we were using the interfering charge. So I asked for 12 months of all arrests for interfering. I read 230 reports where somebody had been charged, and I didn't see a single instance where that was the case, judging only by the police report. And they were all instances where there was some other thing going on, a foot chase, a bicycle chase, a violent arrest where somebody was involving themselves needlessly, and those kinds of things. There were some arrests for interfering that were not where it wasn't used appropriately, but they weren't that kind of a deal.
good to know.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, we'll be adjourned. We'll see you next month. Thank you for coming.
County. They learned pretty quickly that I didn't like that chart. That's awesome. You know.
No.